Welcome to Let Jesus Be Your Doctor, the true path to healing for body and soul.
Welcome to the deep dive. Today, I actually want to begin by asking you to do something that, the modern world rarely affords us the grace to do.
Yeah, which is almost nothing.
Exactly. I am asking you to just stop. Just simply stop. Wherever you are right now, whatever weight you're carrying in your body or in your mind, just for this moment, let the rushing, kind of frantic noise of the day just fade away. Breathe deeply into the silence. Because today's journey it's profoundly different from our usual explorations.
It really is. It's a total shift.
Yeah, we are not gathering data today. We are not rushing toward the next piece of passing earthly information. Today's an invitation to slow down entirely.
To just be.
Right. We are turning our gaze inward, journeying into the quietest, the most hidden spaces of our own being, searching for that sacred place where the true order of life dwells.
And, that demands a total shift in our human posture because
Right.
we spend the vast majority of our lives looking outward.
Oh,
Constantly. When we feel unwell, we look outward for a diagnosis. We look outward for a chemical intervention, or we look outward for these temporary comforts in the material world just to numb the discomfort.
Yeah, like putting a Band-Aid on something.
Exactly. We treat our bodies as these intricate machines that have simply broken down. But the material we are stepping into today, it asks us to view our physical form through a fundamentally different, deeply spiritual lens.
A much deeper lens.
Right. We are seeking the absolute stillness where true eternal healing actually begins long before it ever manifests in the physical cells of the body.
So our mission today is to gently and really reverently explore a spiritual framework. We're guided by a text titled, Let Jesus Be Your Doctor, the true path to healing for body and soul.
Such a powerful title.
It really is. And we're going to immerse ourselves in the concept of recognizing our own inner order and exploring how God's light serves as the ultimate foundational source of healing.
And we have some incredible stark material for this, don't we?
We do. We have the absolute privilege of exploring translated messages received by Bertha Dutt in 1949, alongside the remarkable lived spiritual insights of the 1950s healer Bruno Gröning.
Two very profound perspectives.
Right. And as we conclude, we won't just analyze these concepts intellectually. We will experience them together through a guided meditation drawn directly from the source.
I'm really looking forward to that part. What's fascinating here is, how the foundational premise requires us to unlearn decades of conditioning.
Oh, for sure. We've been taught to think so differently.
Right, because in our clinical modern era, we are taught to view illness as a biochemical glitch, right? Or a genetic error or a viral invasion. It is localized, it's isolated, and it's entirely physical.
It's like a broken part in the machine.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But the wisdom we are exploring today completely shatters that localized view. It posits that physical illness is very often not the root problem at all.
It's just a symptom.
Yes, a symptom. It is the dense physical manifestation of a profound spiritual dislocation. The body only suffers, according to this framework, when the soul has already lost its alignment with the divine.
Okay, let's unpack this. The text begins with a statement that is both incredibly simple and infinitely deep. It tells us many illnesses arise because our inner being has fallen into disorder.
Notice it says many, not just a few.
Right. It doesn't say a few minor ailments. It points to a vast majority of human suffering stemming from an internal state of chaos.
Yeah.
And then it specifically identifies three pillars of our human experience. It says, when our thinking, feeling, and willing stray from the divine law, a person loses their inner peace.
Thinking, feeling, and willing. Let us take that triad and look at it with the reverence it deserves, because this is the absolute core of our human architecture.
It really is everything that makes us who we are.
Right. It represents the entirety of our conscious existence. So to understand what it means to fall into disorder, we have to examine these pillars one by one, very slowly.
Start with thinking.
Consider our thinking, yeah. In our daily lives, human thought is a turbulent, chaotic ocean. We are consumed by relentless anxieties,
Non-stop.
by harsh judgments of others and ourselves, by the exhausting pursuit of material security, and when our thinking disconnects from the divine law, which is fundamentally a law of absolute trust and perfect love.
Which is so hard to maintain.
It is. When we disconnect from that, our minds become a battleground. We lose the anchor of divine truth, and our thoughts just spin into a dark, frantic void.
So if that frantic thinking is the first pillar falling out of alignment, the second is our feeling. the heart space, basically.
Yeah, the emotional center.
Right. When we stray from divine law, our emotions are no longer warmed and guided by the steady, unshakable presence of divine love. They become entirely reactive.
Reactive is the vital word there, because instead of responding to the world from a place of anchored divine peace, our feelings are tossed about by the external chaos.
Like a ship in a storm.
Exactly. We become consumed by fear, by envy, by deep-seated resentments, or by a profound, hollow sense of isolation. Our emotional baseline shifts from grace to defense.
And that defensive posture directly infects the third pillar, right? Our willing.
Yes, our volition.
The driving force behind literally every action we take in the physical world. When our will is aligned with the divine, our actions naturally flow outward.
They're expansive.
Right. They're purposeful, compassionate, life-giving, and they're completely devoid of that frantic self-preservation.
But when that will becomes disordered,
it turns inward upon itself. We become entirely self-serving. Our energy is obsessed with our own ego, our own physical preservation, our own material gain.
We build fortresses around ourselves.
Yes, because we no longer trust that the divine is holding us.
So you have these three forces, thinking, feeling, and willing. When they're all pulling in different directions or collectively pulling away from God toward the material world, the inevitable result, as the text states so clearly, is the total loss of inner peace. The spiritual foundation cracks. The resulting state is one of profound spiritual disease, which, given enough time, must eventually translate into physical disease.
I want to build an image here, just to help visualize this translation from spiritual chaos to physical illness. Think of the human soul as a magnificently crafted, incredibly sensitive musical instrument.
I love this analogy.
Imagine a masterfully built cello, right? Designed to play the most beautiful, resonant, soaring music. Now imagine that the divine law mentioned in the text is the master tuning fork.
Okay.
It emits the perfect, unwavering, eternal frequency of universal love and truth.
Following that imagery, the wood and the strings of that cello represent our physical and emotional architecture.
Right, the body and the mind.
Yeah. And when our thinking, feeling, and willing are perfectly in tune with that divine tuning fork, the instrument of our soul produces pure harmony.
It just resonates perfectly.
We experience that harmony internally as profound peace. And the physical body literally hums with vitality because it is vibrating at its intended divine frequency.
Yeah, but consider what happens when we stray from that tuning fork. When our thoughts become frantic with worry about tomorrow, when our feelings harbor deep bitterness toward a neighbor.
Or ourselves.
Right, or ourselves.
Wow.
When our will is bent entirely on selfish material ambition, the strings of that beautiful instrument are violently twisted.
Get warped.
Yeah, some are pulled far too tight with anxiety. Others are left slack with despair. So when the bow of daily life is drawn across those disordered strings,
the sound produced is harsh. It's discordant and grating.
It hurts to listen to.
And that disharmony isn't just an abstract, poetic concept in this framework. The text is telling us that this spiritual disharmony literally vibrates through physical cells of our body.
Like physical damage.
Exactly. Yeah. That discord is a heavy, destructive frequency. It is exhausting to the human frame. A biological body cannot sustain the vibration of spiritual chaos indefinitely.
It eventually just gives out.
It does. The physical structure simply breaks down under the weight of that internal dissonance. The illness is a physical echo of the spiritual shriek.
Wow, the physical echo of the spiritual shriek. But, and this is crucial, the text does not leave us abandoned in this state of self-imposed resonant despair.
No, it offers a way back.
It introduces the remedy, and the language used is breathtakingly gentle. It says, God's light, however, calls us back into this order gently, lovingly, healingly.
It doesn't shout at us.
Right. The divine response to our chaos is not a booming voice of condemnation from the heavens. It is not an angry demand for immediate, flawless perfection. It is a light.
A light that calls to us, and notice the manner of the calling. Gently, lovingly, healingly.
It respects our free will.
Completely. It respects the free will that allowed us to stray in the first place. It does not force the strings back into tune. It simply offers the perfect frequency again and waits for us to incline our ear toward it.
Thus, the path to healing always begins in the silence of the heart. That is how the opening thought concludes.
The silence of the heart.
But if healing begins in that absolute profound silence, how do we practically find our way back to it amidst the deafening, terrifying noise of our earthly lives?
That is the big challenge.
It is. And this requires us to look at the first historical revelation provided in our text, We're going to explore the words received by Bertha Dead on May 1st, 1949.
A very significant time.
The message is titled, Savior of Body and Soul. I'm going to read this translation for you slowly, really honoring the immense spiritual weight of every single word.
Please do.
She received this message. What you should do is put all your worries to me, who I am truly the best Savior and can take away all your illnesses, who can make you healthy in body and soul, and give you an eternally indestructible life.
You know, to fully grasp the magnitude of that instruction, we have to anchor ourselves in the historical reality of when those words were received.
May 1949.
Right, May 1949 in Germany. The physical world was literally in ruins. Cities were decimated. Millions were grieving unimaginable losses.
It's pure devastation.
Yes, the physical evidence of humanity's internal disorder was scattered across the continent in rubble and ash. And into that specific, terrifying void of material destruction, the message arrives, bring all your worries to me.
Which feels almost impossible.
It is perhaps the single most difficult task a human being can undertake, especially when the material world is collapsing around them.
Well, and in the context of the inner order we just discussed, worry is not just a fleeting emotion. Worry is the ultimate defining manifestation of our inner disorder.
It really is.
It is the loud, continuous expression of a total lack of trust in the divine. When we worry, our thinking is actively asserting a deeply arrogant theology.
Oh, that's a good way to put it. An arrogant theology.
Yeah, we are asserting that God is either not present, not capable, or not loving enough to handle the situation we are facing.
We take the immense burden of the universe upon our own fragile shoulders. We firmly believe that our own frantic mental machinations, playing out every terrible worst-case scenario in the theater of our minds.
Like 3 a.m. lying awake.
Exactly. We think that can somehow control the physical outcome of reality. We act as the general managers of existence, and it shatters our inner peace.
But I have to push back here. On behalf of anyone listening who is currently carrying the terrifying weight of a devastating diagnosis, or the agonizing fear for a sick child.
Of course. It's deeply real.
The instruction to simply bring all your worries to me can sound almost impossibly naive to the human survival instinct. Our biology demands that we worry.
It feels protective.
It does. It feels deeply irresponsible, almost negligent, not to worry when the physical stakes are life and death. So how does this text reconcile the terror of our earthly reality with this absolute demand for divine surrender?
That is the great agonizing human struggle, and it is vital that we do not minimize the terror of that earthly reality. We cling to our worry because it masquerades as action.
Right. It feels like we're doing something.
It feels like we're doing something to protect ourselves or our loved ones, even though that worry is only eroding our own inner peace and further tightening the discordant strings of our soul.
Making us sicker.
Making us much sicker. Bridging the gap between our instinctual terror and divine surrender requires a profound, often painful realization of our own absolute powerlessness.
We have to hit a wall.
We do. We have to reach a point where we acknowledge that our white knuckling, our sleepless nights, our frantic attempts to control the uncontrollable earth, none of it is actually holding the world together. It is only tearing our inner being apart.
So surrender, in this context, is not a passive, apathetic giving up.
Not at all. It is an intensely active, courageous choice of the willing pillar we discussed.
Okay.
It is the deliberate act of gathering up your anxieties regarding your failing health, your finances, your profound grief, and consciously transferring the ultimate outcome to the divine.
It's a choice you have to make over and over.
It is the daily, sometimes hourly, grueling practice of recognizing when the strings of your soul are tightening with terror and consciously choosing to release that tension back to the master tuning fork.
Wow. And look at the promise attached to that grueling surrender. The text says the Savior can make you healthy in body and soul.
That duality is staggering.
It completely rejects the separation of the physical and the spiritual. The body and the soul are not two different entities being treated in separate cosmic departments.
No, they are deeply, inextricably intertwined. The healing of the physical body necessitates the healing of the soul, culminating in the text's ultimate promise of an eternally indestructible life.
But recognizing this divine source of ultimate healing forces us to confront our very immediate physical reality, because we live in dense physical bodies that break, bleed, and decay.
Right.
If healing is ultimately a spiritual surrender, do we just abandon the physical world entirely? Do we turn our backs on doctors and hospitals?
This raises an important question, and it's one the text anticipates.
Yes, the tension between our human efforts and our reliance on divine intervention is addressed directly in Dud's next lines.
What does she say?
I'll read the translated text verbatim. It says, "You are indeed earthly bound to the use of remedies, but if I do not bless them for you, they will miss their effect, just as I can also bless the sick person without external means, so that he is healthy according to my will."
The nuance in that statement is extraordinary. In many deeply spiritual or mystical traditions, there is a dangerous temptation to reject the physical world entirely.
Yeah, like just pray it away.
Right, to claim that if a person possesses enough faith, they should shun all modern medicine as a lack of trust in God. But this revelation radically grounds us in our physical reality.
It explicitly acknowledges our human condition. You are indeed earthly bound to the use of remedies.
Because God created the physical, material world. He created the properties of the herbs, the structure of the minerals, the inquisitive minds of the scientists, and the skilled hands of the surgeons.
So to reject that is missing the point.
To reject the earthly means of healing is, in a sense, a form of spiritual arrogance. It is a refusal to accept the physical limitations of the earthly bodies we currently inhabit.
We are bound to the earth, so we must use the tools of the earth. But, and this is key, the text immediately follows that acknowledgement with a massive paradigm-shifting caveat.
The blessing.
Yes, it subjugates the entire efficacy of that physical medicine entirely to the unseen blessing of the divine. If I do not bless them for you, they will miss their effect. This means that a pill, a surgical intervention, a complex treatment protocol, these are merely physical mechanisms. They are empty vehicles.
And a vehicle, no matter how beautifully engineered, cannot move an inch without fuel.
Exactly.
The divine blessing is the fuel. It is the unseen life force that animates the dead physical matter of the remedy and allows it to perform the miraculous work of true cellular healing within the body.
Think of this dynamic like a farmer planting a field. The farmer is earthly bound to do the physical labor. They must tirelessly plow the hard soil.
They have to do the work.
They must carefully select the right seeds, and they must physically bury those seeds into the dark earth. That is our earthly duty. That is going to the doctor, enduring the treatments, taking the medicine, doing the exhausting physical therapy.
Right, you can't just skip that part. But the farmer knows with absolute humbling certainty that no amount of plowing, no matter how perfect the technique, will ever force that seed to germinate.
Precisely. The true miraculous explosion of life from a dead seed requires the sunlight and the rain. It requires a life-giving force completely outside of the farmer's control or comprehension.
We do the planting.
We can do the earthly work of medicine, but God's blessing is the sunlight and the rain. Without it, the remedy just sits in the dark dirt of our bodies, missing its effect. With it, life bursts forth.
It is a beautiful partnership between human responsibility and divine grace. But we must also look at the second half of that quote.
The part about healing without means.
Yes. The text declares the absolute, unconstrained sovereignty of God by stating, just as I can also bless the sick person without external means.
He's not boxed in.
No, God is not trapped by the physical laws he authored. If it aligns perfectly with the divine will, the healing can occur spontaneously, miraculously, bypassing every earthly remedy entirely.
So the core message is not demanding we choose between earthly medicine and spiritual prayer.
Not at all. It is demanding that we recognize the true source of the healing, regardless of the physical method used.
If you take a remedy while your soul is still vibrating with the harsh discord of anxiety, anger, and selfishness, without aligning your inner being to his order, the text suggests the remedy may simply fall flat.
Because the spiritual foundation of healing the inner order has not been established to receive the blessing.
And taking that to its logical conclusion brings us to the most agonizing, terrifying question of the human experience.
The problem of suffering.
Right. If God has the ultimate power to simply bless away the illness with or without earthly medicine, why do so many innocent, faithful people endure such prolonged, devastating physical and emotional pain? Why does the suffering persist?
That is the ultimate theological tripwire.
It is. And the final portion of Bertha Dudd's message provides a reframe for this exact question that is both profoundly challenging and ultimately deeply comforting.
Let's hear it.
I will read the final quotes from the translation. The Lord says, "And I do this as soon as I recognize the suffering as unnecessary for him, as soon as it has fulfilled its purpose and contributed to the purification of the soul. You should therefore always pray in suffering, 'Father, thy will be done.'"
We must approach this specific passage with the utmost reverence because it touches the deepest, most tender wounds of the listener.
Yes, it's very sensitive territory.
Let us look closely at the explicit theological stance presented here. The source notes state unequivocally, illness, suffering, and distress are not God's punishments.
Not punishment.
We have to let the relief of that statement wash over us. For centuries, humanity has operated under a dark, transactional, highly punitive view of the divine.
The idea that if bad things happen, you did something wrong.
Exactly. The pervasive, toxic belief that if I am sick, it is because God is angry with me. It is a punishment for my secret sins. This text entirely shatters that destructive, fear-based view. Suffering is not punitive, it is purificatory.
But here's where it gets really interesting, and it may be difficult. I must stop you there.
Yeah.
Because framing suffering as a loving course correction or a purification is going to sound incredibly painful, perhaps even cruel to a listener who is dealing with terminal cancer,
I understand that completely.
or to someone watching a loved one waste away in unrelenting agony. How does this text reconcile a perfectly loving God with the allowance of prolonged, devastating physical decay? How is that not a punishment?
It is the hardest question we can ask. The text addresses this by assigning a very specific purpose to the suffering. It explains that suffering is meant to point out to us that we are on the wrong path.
Okay, the wrong path spiritually.
Right. It notes that in our natural human state, we usually strive only for material things and leave no room for God in our thinking and acting. It says, we have taken a wrong turn somewhere, and God wants to stimulate us in his love to think about the truly important things in life.
So it's a wake-up call.
To understand this without it sounding cruel, we have to return to the concept of the eternal soul. If our souls are completely consumed by the material world, when our thinking, feeling, and willing have completely shut God out, we are spiritually walking blindfolded toward the edge of a sheer cliff.
The eternal soul is in mortal danger of total separation from the divine.
Exactly.
So the physical illness, the distress,
Yeah.
that is the intervention.
Yes. Think of it this way. If you see someone you love walking off a cliff and you tackle them to the ground to stop them, the physical impact of being tackled hurts immensely.
We might even break their rib.
You might break their rib in the process. But that broken rib was not a punishment for walking toward the cliff. It was the desperate physical mechanism of their salvation. It was born entirely of protective love. The suffering forces us to stop.
It forces us to lie on our backs in the hospital bed and finally, having exhausted all earthly distractions, look up.
Because there's nowhere else to look.
It aggressively strips away all the illusions of our own self-sufficiency. When you are truly profoundly ill, the material world dissolves.
It completely vanishes.
Your bank account doesn't matter. Your social status is meaningless. Your material possessions offer absolutely zero comfort in the midnight hours of pain. The suffering acts as a fire, burning away the superficial layers of our ego until only the absolute essential remains.
And what is the essential? It is our naked, vulnerable relationship with the Creator.
And look at the condition for the removal of the suffering. The text says God removes it. As soon as I recognize the suffering as unnecessary for him, as soon as it has fulfilled its purpose and contributed to the purification of the soul.
It doesn't linger just to be cruel.
No. The suffering is only allowed to remain as long as it is actively doing the necessary sacred work of breaking down our spiritual resistance.
Once that resistance is broken, once the soul cries out, "Thy will be done," and truly means it, the suffering loses its spiritual utility.
The text then explains the exact mechanics of how healing unfolds once that resistance is surrendered.
Oh.
It says that so we find the way back to God, to include God again in our everyday life. As soon as we begin to include God in our thinking again, the inner being reorganizes itself.
Reorganizes, I love that word.
Healing, according to this profound wisdom, happens in a very strict, unalterable sequence. It happens first in the spirit, then in the soul, and finally in the physical body.
First in the spirit, then in the soul, finally in the body.
We usually want to reverse that.
As humans, we desperately want to reverse that divine order. We beg for the body to be fixed immediately, and we vaguely promise that we'll, get around to the spiritual housekeeping once we feel better.
Right. Heal me first, then I'll pray.
Exactly. We want the symptoms erased while ignoring the disease, but the divine law demands an inside-out approach. The core of the spirit must be realigned with the master tuning fork before the outer strings of the physical body can vibrate with health.
And this exact inside-out approach to healing, this vital necessity of reorganizing the inner being before physical healing can manifest, was not just a theoretical theology.
Yeah, it was practical.
It was being tested and demonstrated on the ground in the lives of tens of thousands of people by the second major figure in our deep dive today, Bruno Groening.
Yes, Bruno Groening. Operating in the deeply scarred post-war landscape of 1950s Germany, Groening became a phenomenon.
A massive phenomenon.
The source notes describe how he accomplished extraordinary, often medically inexplicable healings, but he never claimed to be healing people himself.
That's the key.
He utilized and taught people to access what he called the divine healing stream. And his entire practical philosophy perfectly mirrors and grounds the spiritual revelations received by Bertha Dead.
I want to read Groening's translated quote for you now. Please listen closely to the profound, almost mathematical simplicity of his words.
Let's hear it.
He said, "Order is half of life. Illness is disorder. When a person brings themselves back into divine order, then the divine power also flows and healing can happen."
Order is half of life. Illness is disorder. If we connect this to the bigger picture, Groening is reiterating the fundamental structural law of the universe.
Right.
God is inherently a God of perfect order. The original act of creation was the bringing of divine order to the chaotic void. Illness, therefore, is a localized descent back into the void. It is a localized chaos manifesting in a human organ or tissue.
Wow, localized chaos.
But notice carefully where Groening places the responsibility for the initial step of the cure. He says, when a person brings themselves back into divine order.
He doesn't say God just does it.
Right. He does not say when God magically forces the person into order against their will. He is speaking directly to the sovereign free will of the individual.
That brings us right back to the third pillar we discussed at the beginning.
Yeah.
Our willing.
Yes.
The source text elaborates on this internal responsibility, saying, this order, which Bruno Groening means, begins entirely within ourselves, in our thoughts, our feelings, our trust.
It's an inside job.
It is an internal spiritual housekeeping that no one else can do for us. We have to actively sweep out the resentments, the jealousies, the frantic material grasp.
Right. Nobody can surrender for you.
But how do we actually practically access this divine healing stream that Groening utilized to heal so many? The text gives us the key. It says, when we say an inward yes to God, harmony returns and the healing stream can work.
That inward yes.
Yeah.
It is such a small, unassuming word, but it holds the metaphysical power to shift the cosmos within a human soul.
Just yes.
To say a true, unreserved yes to God is to say a definitive no to the ego's terrified demand for control. It is the ultimate practical application of the surrender Dude wrote about.
It's the release.
It is bowing your head in the very midst of the suffering while the body still aches and praying the prayer, Father, thy will be done. That surrender is the yes. And when that yes is spoken in the absolute, terrifying sincerity of the quiet heart, something tremendous happens in the unseen, energetic realm. The blockages are dismantled.
Let us build an image together to truly understand this divine healing stream.
Okay.
Imagine a massive, endlessly powerful river of pure, radiant, life-giving water. This river represents God's healing stream. It is a constant, eternal reality.
It's always flowing.
Right. It never runs dry. It never ceases its forward, loving motion toward us.
But over the years, through our disordered living, we have blocked it.
We've built a dam.
Through our frantic thinking, our reactive feeling, and our selfish willing, we have painstakingly constructed a massive, heavy dam right across the center of this river.
Yes. We've built this dam out of the heavy stones of our daily worry, the thick, rotting logs of our old bitterness and unforgiveness, and the dense mud of our obsession with the material world.
Such a powerful visual.
And the water of the healing stream is right there. It is pressing with immense loving force against the dam, but it cannot breach it. It cannot flow into the dry, diseased, dying valleys of our physical bodies.
So when Groening tells the sick multitudes that they must say an inward yes to God, he isn't telling them that they have to magically, through sheer willpower, generate the healing water themselves.
You don't make the water.
The water is already there. The grace is entirely pre-existing.
The yes doesn't create the stream. Saying yes to God is simply the spiritual mechanism of opening the floodgates of the dam we built.
Just letting it through.
It is an act of total release. We let go of the control, we surrender the terrified ego, and in doing so, we clear the obstruction from our inner being.
And once that gate is open, we don't have to force the water to flow.
Right, you don't have to manage the healing.
Yeah.
The natural divine power of the river rushes through, flooding our spirit, then saturating our soul, and finally overflowing into our physical body with that transformative, reorganizing energy.
And that rushing water washes away the remaining stubborn debris of our inner disorder. It is a beautiful, deeply comforting reality. It is a passive reception of an act of grace.
We do the hard internal work of opening the gate. God does the miraculous work of the healing flow.
Exact.
Having dwelled in the deep theology of inner order from both Bertha Dudd and Bruno Groening, it is time for us to move from intellectual contemplation into lived application.
This is the most important part.
The true, profound beauty of our source material today is that it does not abandon us in the realm of theory. It provides a direct, practical, spiritual method to begin dismantling that dam right now.
Right here, right now.
It offers a guided meditation to actively invite this inner ordering into our physical bodies.
I think we're ready for this.
We are going to walk through this together exactly as the source material dictates. I invite you, the listener, wherever you are, to fully participate in this moment of grace.
Unless you're driving.
Yes, if you are driving or operating machinery, please simply keep your eyes open, listen, and let the truth of the words wash over your spirit. But if you are in a safe, quiet place, I ask you to physically follow the instructions of the text.
We will take this very, very slowly.
We will. Allow the silence between the words to be just as important as the words themselves.
Let the space do the work.
Close your eyes.
Just let everything go.
Breathe calmly. Let the breath fall into its natural, unforced rhythm.
Deep and slow.
Imagine a warm, golden light in your heart.
Just resting there.
It is the light of Christ.
Feel its warmth.
Feel how this light gets brighter
Expanding.
and brings peace.
Letting the peace settle.
Everything that was restless may now be ordered.
Let it find its place.
Everything that was heavy may now be released.
Just let it fall away.
Now, say quietly within the absolute silence of your own soul,
In that quiet space.
Lord, bring me into your order.
Bring me into your order.
Lass dein Licht in mir wirken. Let your light work in me.
Let your light work in me.
Just breathe in that silence. Let us reflect gently on the specific, profound imagery we just journeyed through together. The text asks us to imagine a warm golden light resting in the heart.
Why this specific visualization, you know? Light is the universal, eternal symbol of divine presence. It is the truth that effortlessly eliminates the darkness. But notice that it is not described as a harsh, blinding, interrogating white light.
No, it's gentle.
It is described as warm and golden. This speaks to the immense, comforting, unconditional love of the Christ consciousness. It is a light that does not burn our fragile human imperfections. It soothes them.
It's like the morning sun.
Exactly. It is the gentle sunlight that the buried seed in the cold earth so desperately needs to finally break open and grow.
And the focal point of this light is the heart. It does not ask us to imagine the light in the mind or the head. We are not being asked to intellectually deduce the presence of God.
Or to figure out the mechanics of our healing.
Right. We are asked to feel it in the deep center of our being, the seat of our feeling, the very place where that profound inward yes of true surrender must actually occur.
And observe the specific miraculous actions the light performs within that heart space. Everything that was restless may now be ordered. This directly addresses the inner chaos.
The frantic strings of the cello.
The frantic, terrifying vibration of the out-of-tune soul that we discussed. The light acts as the master tuning fork, vibrating with such pure divine authority that it brings our frantic, twisted strings back to a state of calm, beautiful resonance.
And then it says, everything that was heavy may now be released. This is the direct physical answering of Dudd's towering instruction to bring all your worries to me.
The heavy stones of earthly anxiety.
The crushing burdens of chronic illness.
The exhausting weight of our own pride and ego.
They're not forcibly ripped from our hands. We simply open our hands and they're gently released into the warm golden light.
It is the perfect experiential alignment with Groening's concept. We have just practiced dismantling the dam, so the healing stream can finally flow unhindered through our spirit, our soul, and our physical body.
As we draw this sacred deep dive to a close, I want to read the final blessing provided in our source text. Let these translated words settle over you as a benediction for the remainder of your day. May God's light continue to resonate within you today, as a reminder of the divine order that carries you. Let this light accompany you through the day in every thought and every word, in every encounter. Amen.
Amen.
Our source text also gives us a glimpse into the next step of this ongoing spiritual journey. It notes that the next broadcast will explore the theme, the purification of the soul when God touches the heart.
That sounds incredible. I look forward to exploring that profound transformation with you when the time comes.
As you slowly transition your awareness back into the physical world around you, into the earthly duties you are bound to perform, I want to leave you with one final lingering question to ponder in the quiet spaces of your day.
Something to sit with.
We began this time together by observing that our modern world rarely allows us to stop, and we recognize that true eternal healing must always begin in the absolute unbroken silence of the heart.
It's the only place it can start.
So what does this all mean for you right now, today, as you carry this warm, golden light forward into your life? What specific, frantic, earthly noise are you willing to actively turn off today so that you can finally, clearly hear the gentle, ordering call of that divine tuning fork?
That is the question we all have to answer.
May you find that silence. May you find your inner order. Until next time.